Good evening, friends, on this wonderful Tuesday evening. We welcome you once again to Yam Tuesday. And today, as it is the norm from now up until November 2024, every Tuesday is going to be dedicated to young adult movement topics and conversations. And today is not any better or any different. And today we have one of our own who is no stranger to this platform and to this channel and to the church. But before I introduce our guest to you this evening, please call everyone that you would like to call. And this conversation that we're going to have is an uncomfortable conversation, which many of us are not keen to talk about or are not even ready to talk about because we want to be where we want to be in the space of the church. And so today we are going to be talking about WAITRHOOD. Abutu Aruna is going to tell us about what that means. And the topic for this evening is WAITRHOOD. When you are too old to identify as youth, yet you lack the social markers of an adult. And I know this topic is going to touch some of us in our studio, but hey, we would not be progressive if as young adult movement, we do not talk about those conversations which even talk to us and talk about us in the space of the church. And please allow me to ask one of our own, Abuti Takalani Wamsanda Varmin. I see you are here. And Brother Tagalan. You know, when you ask people to pray, they run away. But what have happened? Auskola, please urubulele ka thapelo this evening. But the future is female. Let us see if the future indeed is female.
Not a problem. Let us bow our heads and pray.
You are muted.
Apologies for that. Let's start. Dear God, we thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for this moment that we are able to meet as young people again who belong to you, and we're able to speak about social topics and topics that touch us in our lives on a day-to-day basis. Father Lord, we pray for this session. We pray for our speaker. May he speak from his heart. May he speak what you want him to tell us, Jehovah. We pray, Jehovah, that this session be fruitful, that it touches every single person that is in this room, and also that we leave this room equipped to be better people, not only just for ourselves, but for our families and for the community. We ask all of this to Christ, the Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen, amen, and amen. Thank you so much. As I have mentioned, the topic for this evening is WAITRHOOD. Too old to identify as youth, yet you lack the social markers of an adult. And this is a conversation that our very own brother, Hlonie Lepele, is going to lead us into. And Hlonie is going to give us a bit of a presentation about what he speaks about and what it means to be in WAITRHOOD or to be part of those, maybe some of us who don't know, we don't know. And maybe for once, instead of you looking outside and outside of yourself, look at yourself and say, do I believe or belong in this particular phenomenon of WAITRHOOD? Hlonie, welcome back to WesleyGuildSA, but also welcome to Young Adult Movement.
Thank you, my sister. It's really a privilege and an honor to be part of the space today. Always great being on the page WesleyGuildSA, and even more special to be part of something new that is happening within the church. And so thank you so much.
No, thank you. And before you start, let me just remind everybody that this session is going to be flighted both on the WesleyGuildSA page and also Connectional Young Adult Movement Facebook page. Please like and share the Connectional Young Adult Movement page. As you know, we are trying to do as much as we can by bringing the new thing that God is doing in the church. I would turn over to you.
Thank you so much, my sister. As I have been introduced already, the name is Hlonie for short, Lepele. And I come from a family. I have a beautiful wife and a son. And yeah, and so I'm really excited to be sharing on this topic of WAITRHOOD, which is a new phenomena, maybe not so new, but something that we've identified. And so perhaps before I start, I want to invite us all to just think about a particular scenario that would help us, that I'm going to ask us to hold on to during the duration of the presentation so that we can locate everything that I will be saying within that particular scenario. But I will also ask at any point where you feel like you would like me to clarify something, I'd like to give you that dispensation even while I present to actually stop me at any point. Actually, I'd encourage it for that matter, just so that we move with the utmost clarity.
Thank you.
Please. And so I want us to think of, so I grew up in a township now, the whole allocationing where there are guys, maybe between the ages of 40, 45, or at times, even slightly older than that, or maybe say 35 to 45 in that age bracket. And these guys, I do not identify them with my parents because they do not have their own house, nor do they have their own family. But at the very same time, I do not see them as youth because they are much older than I am. They are not at school. And so the question has always been, where do these guys belong? So let's give these people names. Let's say we are speaking here about Usipho no Sintauling. Sipho and Sintauling are not married because they don't work. Sipho and Sintauling are living in their parents' house or at a back room in their parents' yard. Sipho and Sintauling no longer identify with what we call youth because they are much older than that. But at the very same time, they do not identify with what we call adults because they do not have the social markers to identify as adults. So in everything we're going to talk about today, I want you to know that these are the people we are talking about. So in order to break this down, what I will do in this presentation, I will begin with the social phenomena, with the cultural invention of youth, firstly, and then we're going to look at trace way from how from youth then came the concept of WAITRHOOD. And then we're going to explore together as to how do we then as a church and as a movement respond to this new phenomena? Because these people cannot find identification in homogeneous youth organizations, nor can they find identification in homogeneous adult organizations. So now, the first place where I also want to start is that the church has never been in the business of defining what youth is and what youth is not. I think so often we spend so much time as the church trying to define who is youth and who isn't. But that has never been ours to define. Instead, we've always responded to what society defines as youth. And then we've said, how can we best minister to this particular group that is called youth? There are two examples which we'll touch on later on. The first one is you look at in 1780. The first time we come close as a church to ministering to any form of youth ministry is when we begin with Sunday school. That's in 1780, after the Industrial Revolution has displaced parents from children. Children are employed in the cities, and with children being employed in the cities, there's no one to teach them how to read and write, and no one to teach them basic life essentials like Wipumula Mamina and just looking after themselves. And so it is in that context that the concept of Sunday school then begins, at a time when these kids are not at work, but they are around. But even closer to home, in that particular context, what then happens, is that the concept of youth is born. We've got this life stage which we will explore later on. This concept of youth is born. We've got this phenomena where now you've got these people that are called youth that are no longer being given Christian education in their home space because the Industrial Revolution has disrupted the home space, which we'll explore in a short while. And so what then happens is that they now need a new space that can teach them, that can give them Christian education. And so organizations like Youth for Christ are born, and it is in that context that I think it is the 1896 conference of the Methodist Church in London resolves to establish something called the Wesley Guild. Now, that's the concept that then informs what we now today understand as the Wesley Guild. And so in both instances, the church does not decide that we're going to have this age group that we're going to call youth, but the church responds to what's happening in society, which is very important for this conversation. Now, the second thing is that the concept of adolescence, which is loosely translated as a transition of as a transition phase of growth and development between childhood and adulthood, which encompasses psychological, social, and moral factors. Now, this concept of adolescence, which is basically transitioning from being a child to becoming an adult as accepted by society, is a cultural phenomenon. Before the Industrial Revolution, you were a child, and then as soon as biology kicked in and you became an adult biologically, and you started to have biological features of an adult, your transition would then begin. And in a Southern African context, how we would then respond to these markers, these biological developments, is through rites of passage that facilitate this transition then from childhood to adulthood. And so before the Industrial Revolution, this transition was almost immediate to very short. An example is how people would then participate as adults. As soon as they became of age, they would undergo a process where they would maybe take on the train of that particular household, or they would at times even be taken for an apprenticeship at a close relative's house, who would then train them in a particular trade. And then that would inform how they would participate in society as adults. But then when the Industrial Revolution takes place in Europe, and that's in the 18th century, the first thing is that the system is disrupted. The bartering system is disrupted. People's trades are put under threat. And the long story cut short is that suddenly people have to migrate to the city as the world is urbanized in order to pick up a trade in the industries. What this does is that it's got an implication on this process, because now suddenly you cannot just pick up on a trade that your parents used to have, but you now need to get trained in a particular skill that is determined by the city. So what this does is that because of other factors such as child employment, when children then, because they could fit, for example, into pipes and into those industry tunnels easier, then there was child employment or child exploitation, if we're going to term it correctly. And because of such factors and all of these different factors, then came in the phenomena of prolonged schooling. Now, remember, prolonged schooling was for an elite few, but then it became something that was for everyone. Now, we are still in Europe here. It became something that was for everyone at a much later stage because of the Industrial Revolution and the urbanization of life, and suddenly needing to learn for a particular trade. Now, this is history that I am really just chopping. If you want to look more into this, I will recommend some authors. Now, what then this means is that suddenly people have to train. Suddenly people go to school. And when people are together in one place, in school together, what then this does, it gives birth to a new culture. And that's what we call youth culture. Now then, the church will then respond to this phenomena called youth culture, which is new, because remember, before the Industrial Revolution, how people would be taught and brought up in the ways of the Lord is it would be administered through people being trained within the household. But now with families now having to be disintegrated, fathers needing to go to the city, children needing to go to school, and all of these developments, this space, which we call the family space as a hermeneutic sphere, has been disrupted. And now you need a new space for Christian education. And it is that which then prompts organizations such as Youth for Christ, YMCA, and so forth to respond to this new need, this new phenomena called youth culture. And then they respond to that. Now, it is in that context that the Methodist Church will say, these people are being discipled outside of the context of the church, which is all and good, but we need to retain them within the context of the church, and hence the Wesley Guild and its identity as a parachurch organization within the church, or maybe as a parachurch organized movement within the church. Now, so what we need to keep in mind is in everything we've done as the church in responding to this thing called youth, in our youth ministry programs, it has always been informed by what is happening in society, and not us just sitting and saying, this is what we want to do. And I think even Moruti Situnya yesterday in his presentation touched on how the Wesley Guild from time to time has been informed by external factors. If this was, for instance, if this was a basic commerce class, would say the church's response to youth has always been informed by macro factors. So it is the internal environment responding to what is happening in the external environment, and not the internal environment dreaming what it would like to do for the external environment. And often that is where our mistake is. Story for another day. Now, the same phenomena can then be seen play out within the Southern Africa context, whereas what happens in the 20th and the 21st century as industrialization hits Africa through the various historical factors, what then begins to happen is that even our transition from childhood to adulthood is disrupted. Suddenly, you are no longer an adult. Society does not accept you as an adult by mere virtue of having undergone a particular rite of passage. But now you need to get a job so that you can get married, have your house, pay taxes, and then we can look at you and say, you are an adult. So this whole space has disrupted. Now, culturally, we are now disrupted, but also the church is disrupted. And hence you find that from one context to the other, even within the Methodist Church of Southern Africa, there is no homogeneous definition of what is youth. On paper, it's homogeneous, but contextually, it differs. Now, note that it is no longer about the person becoming of age and being transitioned, but there are now all these social markers that are required for one to be considered an adult. And therefore, it is therefore then that we come back to Sipho, and I think I said in Taoling that we spoke about at the beginning, Sipho and Sintaoling. Now, Sipho and Sintaoling, before the Industrial Revolution, would have been adults. As a matter of fact, Sipho would have probably had family members donate cows so that Sipho and have a wife. But now Sipho has to work. Sipho has to get his own house, has to get his own money for lobola so that he can have the social markers of an adult. But he is within the age of what we call an adult. And so Sipho is in this very awkward place that the church has often not taken note of. Sipho cannot fit into a youth homogeneous group, nor can he fit into an adult homogeneous group. In the youth homogeneous group, Hlonie Lepele. In an adult homogeneous group, we want money for 1,000 rand every member. Where is Sipho in this? is it not easier for Sipho to not come to church? We will come back to that. So then this brings us to this phenomena called waithood. Now, waithood, according to Mapungubwe Institute of Strategic Reflection, takes into consideration the socio-demographics characteristics such as race, ethnicity, education status, class, and gender. So waithood it basically suggests that the concept of youth is not homogeneous. There are people who are done with all the biological factors and psychological factors of becoming an adult. They're done. They are no longer children. Biologically, psychologically, and even morally, they are not children. But they don't have the other social markers of an adult. And so then Mapungubwe would then say, these are people who live in a state of suspension. They are done being children, but are waiting to be accepted by society as adults. Now, suddenly I understand why it is so easy to find Sipho sitting at the corner from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Suddenly I understand why Sintauleng is in her night dress from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Mapungubwe then takes it a step further and says, these are often affected by race. And so chances are Sipho and Sintauleng are there because they are Black. They say this is often even affected by factors such as ethnicity, taking into consideration that the Industrial Revolution is unfolding at different stages in Africa because of the widening gaps of inequality. While some of us are at an advanced stage of the digital revolution, there are people who are still at the very early stages of the Industrial Revolution. And so even their location will determine how fast they make it out of the state of suspension. Mapungubwe says your level of education will even determine this. And so I remember bumping into a particular minister. I'm a Methodist, so I'll name drop. Bumping into Mfundisi Molo at the Fees Must Fall protest. And in his reflection, he says, I do wish we had, and I'm paraphrasing, he says he does wish we had the same energy towards ECD. Because the truth is, the Fees Must Fall protest speaks into a few and not necessarily into everyone's reality. What about those? And I know this is where Isa will probably give me a heart emoji. What about those who are in early childhood development, who not because they are not smart enough, but because of their circumstances they are raised in, will not even dare make it to its tertiary? Now, Mapungubwe says that has a factor. And he says, even the class you are born into. Now, this is where it becomes interesting because now I went to a school where you've got people who did not even bother going to varsity, but they are wealthier than me right now because of the families they are born into. So Mapungubwe says all of these factors have an impact. Now, chances are Sipho and Sintauleng are where they are because of their level of education. They are born into working class families. And therefore they cannot make this transition as easy as Jared and Michaela, who are born under different circumstances. And so,
I would, Hlonie,
yes,
you gave me the carte blanche to stop you.
100%.
And I have been tempted to stop you probably 8 times already because I just feel like you are talking about some of us. And when I say some of us, I mean people who find ourselves in church. But even in church, we do not belong. One, you made an example about Sipho, and you said, as an adult, biologically, by the mere fact that you possess features of an adult, you are past the age of 18 or you've passed the adolescent stage, we therefore regard you as an adult. But because now you do not have, you are now in this period of waithood, you don't have a job and all of that, which means you are not able to perform as a normal adult would perform. in society generally. You don't have a job and all of that, but you no longer belong to a confirmation class or Sunday school, and you have, in a larger extent, probably you don't even feel that you fit in the Wesley Guild. Now there is that WAITRHOOD. Am I correct?
100%. Especially with the Guild, I'd say even especially more so on the inland side of the Orange River.
Yeah. So there's a question now on our chat, and I don't want to miss it in case more questions come. This is such a reality for so many South Africans. Such people can easily lose their dignity in society. How do we support them in preserving their dignity, because it is a temporary situation? Is it a temporary situation? When you answer that question.
Can I ask that we park that towards the end? Because some of what I'm going to speak into right now, we'll touch on that. You see, because now what you're saying is now this is very important. You know, the question of then how does the church preserve their dignity? You know, because now Mapunguwe says they are in the state of suspension. It's a prolonged period of suspension between childhood and adulthood, too old for an average youth movement, yet cannot relate to your working married age peers in other adult homogeneous organization. Now, how does the church respond to this phenomena? Now, the truth is, homogeneous ministries will find it very difficult to respond to this particular phenomena. It'll be very difficult, more especially because of the expectations that often come with these organizations. Let us think for a moment what happens when our programs are too expensive for Sipho and Nthauleng. Does this illuminate their state of WAITRHOOD? Because when we put together certain programs, we say, on average, people at this age should be working. What does that say to Sipho and Nthauleng? When Sipho and Nthauleng sit in other homogeneous male and female organizations of the church, and the expectation is that of a working adult, what does that say to them? And I'm not going to answer these questions. This is what I want us then together reflect on. What then happens to Sipho and Nthauleng when they are excommunicated by the church because they cohabitate? And yet the reason they cohabitate is because they're saying, I come from a conservative family that will not allow me to get married without lobola, and yet I love this woman. Have we challenged culture to make exceptions? I don't want to hear about exceptions that we used to make, because that's not where we are anymore. Let's not speak about a certain uncle will give us the home. That's not our reality anymore. How has the church spoken into that situation? How much of injustice has there been in Nthauleng, who says, biologically, I'm an adult, and yet your teachings continue to say, Yenza, kodwa, don't come with evidence. And so there are all of these challenges then, where I hope that even in the future, as the church even continues on conversations around marriage and various things, that this is then our input. Our input is not only to just respond to, and so when I started, I then said to us, I said, the church has always responded to what is happening in society. Now, this is where we need to be cautious when we take the cue from European churches in defining what is youth. Because their social, political climate is different. And therefore, ours brings in different dynamics that are completely unique and ought to inform how we describe, how we define, and how we minister to youth and those who are in WAITRHOOD. And so I would even throw the question at us as people here, everyone with an interest in the development of YAM. How are we responding to people in Taoling? Is our programs exclusive? Do our programs consider that there are those who are in a suspended period? And they might not be in our pews. And this is where we sometimes miss it as the church. Because when we develop programs, especially when we become organizations, when we develop programs, we look at those who are on the pews. We don't look at those who have not come because they feel as though the church does not include them or will not accommodate them because of what they may lack. You know, I'll make an example with whenever we speak about people living with disabilities, it's not a topic of interest because we say they are not on our pews. We will take a democratic decision when they are on our pews. Hello, this is church. If we take democratic decisions, we'll be exclusive based on our demographics. But if we are going to be prophetic, we need to say, who is not in our church but is in our society? And when I said the church has always taken its cue from society in defining youth and responding to youth needs and development, we ought to ask ourselves, who are these young people? Who are these people who are in waithood? Who are these sipos and taolings in our respective context that our programs have not reached? And so those are some of the questions we need to grapple with. And perhaps that is what we offer even to conversations that are happening in the church, as opposed to, you know, and not just maybe continuing with other business that can continue with us, without us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Abuti. So many things. Samatomo, people bang shout, why did I stop you? I apologize. I need to apologize to this person. Tlohelo Madruna, why are you stopping him? I was given that carte blanche to be able to do that. You know, generally we do not stop people when they present. So when a presenter comes and I am able to go this way, we have to respect that. And that is why that is what I did. I was respecting exactly what he said. But it really was not meant in a bad way. Here is Lenz asking a question. As I know you, Sis Isa, Lenz is saying, if Sipho and Sentauleng have most of the attributes of being an adult, but lack the financial aspect, what is it that we can do to make sure that they feel accepted and they belong, firstly to their church and in extension by the society at large?
100%. That is a very important question, my sister. You know, the economy plays a huge role in this, but it is not a sole factor.
Yeah.
So so I think the first thing is that we can be creative, you know, in how we respond to people's economic needs. We can be creative from empowerment programs. But what I would love to caution us from is when we respond to such needs, let us take also a holistic approach and not treat Sipho and Ntauling as people with mere economic needs. So we must remember that Sipho and Ntauling are adults. Maybe that's where we need to go. They're adults. They're in a state of suspension, but they're adults. That's the first thing. And so we need to also nurture other aspects of their being that have something to offer to the church. But at the very same time, also as brothers, as sisters, as siblings in Christ, empower one another towards being, so that we can participate in the economy as adults. You know, that is a need. However, we must not limit development to that. Why do I say that? There's a beautiful book by, I think it's McGloria and Speckman. I'll ask those who are friends and siblings where I live to perhaps share the book reference on comment section. But I think it's McGloria and Speckman, 2017, that speaks about the danger of isolating, that speaks about the danger of only limiting it, looking at people and saying they're economic projects, you know, because then the danger of that within the context of the church is that it negates other aspects of their development, but it falls into the trap of Western development. That suggests that there's this particular pyramid that we must follow. And as much as we are finding our way up this pyramid, we are developing which is far from the truth. The truth is people can develop wherever they are economically. Let us not force people outside of an economic bracket in order for them to participate as adults, but we need to create a world where people can participate as adults within their economic bracket. Because the truth is, for a very long time, I don't know up until when, society will have people that struggle economically. Now, our question as a church is, how do we make sure that despite your economic position, you continue to participate in the church as an adult with dignity, while at the very same time we try to empower you to make it out. But let us not limit it to just taking people outside of a particular bracket. That's dangerous.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you so much, Abuti. Sis Isa, your hand is up.
Thank you very much, Brother Hlonie. Actually, I'm glad you made the point about taking people out of their economic bracket, because one of the things that I've highlighted as you're speaking and how we're taking the European stance on defining what it means to be an adult and social markers. And it made me reflect on my own life. People usually laugh at me where I continually say, the reason why I've stayed at school is because I was just trying not to be an adult as much as I can, so that I can grow as much as I can until I feel like, okay, now I can be an adult. Because I feel, because of the social markers, we are forced into a corner of being adults when we're not even adults in terms of our maturity, in terms of our age, or even our desires. So you're 26, but at home you are treated as someone who's like 40 because you meet certain social markers. And you then see a change when a person turns 40. Now they're acting like a 25-year-old who's a young person. So I think as we also redefine our way of what it means to be an adult, I like that you pointing out that it should be less so the social aspect of it around economy should influence less. And we look at other things, because if you're looking at our Buti Sipho and Sister Ndauling, they actually carry so much wisdom about our society. They carry so much wisdom about our church. They carry so much wisdom about so much that is happening in the community that we live in. They know the ins and outs of our community, that we can actually grow a lot from them. But because we've used the economy as a way of determining whether a person can participate as an adult or not, we miss so much. And this is seen a lot in our families, where that uncle who's not working is not listened to when there are discussions about a mcimbi that is going to happen, because they can't contribute. And that's actually the person who would usually have the most information about the very mcimbi that we want to do. So we need to also look at how we do. I'm just commenting on what you're saying, that we need to look at how we're defining what adulthood means. And I would urge a lot of young people who are in my age, I just turned 30, resist being an adult as much as you can until you feel like, okay, I can be an adult. Because I think we've spoken about this, me and you, brother, Hlonie, on this very platform, about the rush of finding your purpose in your 20s, and you put everything, the pressure, and then you get to 25, you get to 35, and you feel like you're transitioning, and you realize you have not grown in the essential parts of your life in as a person, because the economical side was prioritized more than the other parts. Thank you.
Thank you, Sis Isa.
Thank you. Thank you. Oh, sorry. I was the Selailo.
No. Over to you. Please,
okay,
please
thank you,
respond.
My sister. Sister Isa, you've really unlocked an entire kind of one. And I think what I may have neglected to say is that Africa has not done justice in defining youth for itself.
Yeah.
We have not done justice in even saying, is there such a thing as youth, whatever it may look like? Why do I say this? Now, there is this beautiful concept by Umbiti, where in speaking about concepts of time, he argues that because our concepts of time are different to Europe's, we would take more, we find more value in the past than we do in the future. Hence, we are we are so deeply entrenched in traditions because that's established truths, and our eschatology is informed by the past more than it is informed by what is to become. And then Mbiti then goes on to argue that because of that, the eldest living member in any African community is the most valuable, as you have rightfully said. They tend, regardless of whether they have money or not, they tend to come with wisdom around customs and what we're about to do. And so I always laugh. For instance, I'm from Johannesburg and our homestead is in Vicksburg. And whenever we go to Vicksburg in the Free State and for Mukete or anything that we may need to do as a family at that particular time, even though the ones from Free State, from Joburg may come with the resources, but the truth is, mosebetsi o tshwarwa ke those, umcimbi o qhutshwa by those we have found there, whether they're employed or not. It is them, because they are more clued up on the processes and everything, number one. And then number two, the eldest living family, which has a very beautiful impact, because I've seen my dad go into a youth-like pose based on who is standing before him.
Yeah.
So my dad's age often, when we are at Vicksburg, is informed by who is there or who is not there. When the eldest member of our family is present, he takes on a different role. Yet, when the eldest member of our family is present, we are emva. And so there is a sense in which you find that even youth within our spaces is a shifting target. What is defined as youth is like this shifting target. Because based on who is present, I am or I am not the person who can be viewed as the eldest member, and therefore the one with all the markers to be viewed as the elder in that particular space. And you see how then it is not informed by my socio-economic status. And the danger of a development that isolates one's socio-economic status is that it brings in some of these ills, such as the wealthiest cousin being part of the decision-making circle, even when he has no clue what is happening and what needs to happen. And so thank you for bringing that up. I would say we need to do justice for ourselves and not necessarily define, but look outside in Africa as a church and say, what exactly is this age group that we are trying to respond to? But also, how do we prophetically speak to this suspended period that a lot of people find themselves in, which I would imagine, I don't want to make this statement because I've not come across research that suggests so, but I would imagine has a huge impact on people's mental health. How then do we as a church respond prophetically to such?
Sure. Thank you so much, Sis Isa. Thank you, Abu Hlonie. I'm going to read the questions on our Facebook, and there's quite a few. I would like for you to please note them so that you can answer them systemically or as they come. The first one is from Kaugelo. What kind of God we believe in matters so much that God is one of the strongest predators or predictors of a range of social and moral attitudes. In other words, our character doesn't only reflect our creator God, it reflects who we create God to be. Okay, the next one go Stoba. The Milner Zembe Are, please share the name of the book you are referring to. I want to read as many of them as I can. Dudushabangu Are, does age matter in church? I'm not sure what she means, but yeah, does age matter in church? Kabo Sambo says, this is interesting, something to ponder on as we move with our programs as YAM. Be inclusive and think beyond the walls of the church. Dinero is asking, how do we find a balance between what the society views as an adult and what the Methodist Church views as an adult in terms of age? Secondly, how do we make young adults like Sipho feel welcomed in the church instead of feeling like a burden in this economic crisis, especially in a church of Christ? Nomfundo Ngwabe, does this include the non-aligned, or are we excluding them too? By the non-aligned, I am assuming that you mean people who don't go to church or adherents. I'm not sure, Sis Nomfundo, please help me. Yes, I think, okay, KG again. This great presentation also points to practical ways in which youth leaders might seek to address the challenges faced by WAITRHOOD generation. The significance of an open cultured movement of young adults is engaging and drawing young adult people together, empower each other to deal with challenges around social changes. However, rather than YAM membership and participation being the catalyst for the individual empowerment of young adult people, it is the mentoring relationship developing that will empower each other. Can I read one or two more? Okay. I am Dima says, be careful, the poor will always be around you. It is Speckman 2007, a people-centered development, a biblical vision of Africa's development. Thank you so much for that book. We really appreciate that. Yes, I think that's that. You can respond to those ones. I hope you can follow them on our page.
Thank you so much. I'll begin where we ended. Dima, and thank you so much. I think that's the book Uzembe was looking for. So I think that already sorts that out. You know, I take interest in his comment on the poor will always be around you. You know, and I think it just really highlights the need for us to align ourselves, you know, with a church that speaks into the state of waithood. Is this only non-aligned youth? I suppose I'm assuming that it seeks to ask, is this only for those who are in organizations, established organizations? And I will say, here we're speaking about the church's response. Obviously, YAM will speak into a response that will speak to everyone else, you know, and so forth. You know, how YAM responds, how Wesley Guild responds may differ, but also how the church responds, you know. And what I would encourage for us to do is that these are both entities within the MCYU, which ought to be focusing on youth in general, you know, and we need to think creatively as to how, you know, so for instance, when our theme, you know, I saw a glimpse of our theme. I don't want to preempt what the presiding bishop will be saying, you know, but when you speak about reviving the church and creating an alternative society, you know, it means that how then do we become countercultural, you know, in a world that makes sure that those who are in waithood do not feel like adults, and because of that, you know, they're accepted lesser, in a world where when they go to Miketi and they're at their homesteads, their opinion does not mean much because of their social economic status, despite their age. You know, in a world where when they go when they socialize with their peers, they are treated like ice boys because they have not contributed to whatever is being done in that particular moment. You know, in a world that closes doors because of how they look, you know, we need to say as the church, how do we create alternative spaces? How do we as a church becomes a space that embraces that these are adults?
Yeah.
That Lehlohonolo, who is 40 years old, and Sipho, who is 40 years old, are the same. And it is ours to disrupt that which has made Sipho not have these social markers of the society that we live in. So, and then when it comes to defining youth, you know, I think, Ausdini, one of the things that we need to do whenever we look at trends as a church, we need to say, where do we learn from these trends and adapt our strategy or our mission? And where do we look at trends and become countercultural? Now, the adaptation aspect of it here would then mean us saying, there's this thing called waithood. Therefore, when we design our program, let us remember that there are people who are in this period. We cannot design it as though we are the world and just cluster it youth, children, adults, and make it strictly that, those homogeneous groups. We need to remember that there are these people. And therefore, I have the question to ask the church is, if one is in their WAITRHOOD and they want to identify with YAM, how do we make sure that they continue to do so? They want to identify with YMG and so forth and so forth. And perhaps the question is, instead of YMG saying, looking down on Sipho and saying, because Sipho is cohabitating, we will not even listen to him. I can't just how does YMG make sure that we help Sipho to not find himself in such a compromised position? And that in as much as he may have fallen short and everything, but how do we make sure that it is not just an issue of economic injustice that has landed him in such a position? And then, and the same with Sintaoling, when Sintaoling finds herself pregnant outside of wedlock. How do we have difficult conversations and say, how do we avoid Sintaoling finding herself in such a position that, as much as we say Sintaoling, we would want you to have a child within a particular context, we're also making sure that we continue to advocate towards a world that will not make this impossible to attain for her, and a world and even a world where those opportunities that are available for her to escape this trap, is realized. And then how do and I think the other question was, what was the first question again? Can you repeat the first question? That's the one I'm missing.
The first question, KG, the one about the God, God that let me go back to it. What kind of God we believe in is that we believe in matters so much that God is one of the strongest predictors of a range of social and moral attributes. In other words, our character doesn't only reflect our creator God, it reflects who we create God to be.
Sure. And I think as much as there's truth to that, what we also need to take into consideration, is, how does our gospel speak into young people who are despaired? They're saying, look, I'm never going to get married. My socioeconomic status will never allow me to have that dream wedding, or maybe that marriage that I wanted. They will never let me go without lobola. How do we consider speaking into that also, because that can have an impact on some of the moral decisions we make and so forth. So let us take into mind various factors, because now the danger of just having a homogeneous approach to this is that we unawareingly condemn people and make it difficult for them to exist within our pews.
Yeah, thank you. Before I go to Simanye Makungu, I'm now thinking, as you're talking about Hlonie, what happens when you have a Silalo who has a certain type of education, belongs to a certain class, but then Silalo falls in love with Sipho, who, where I come from, my pack shop, you are always somewhere because now you are in this WAITRHOOD. But then Silalo falls in love with Sipho, but Silalo is aware that Sipho may never afford to marry her, because of the space that he found himself in. Now Silalo, why do Sipho chelete hore amunyale? Because Silalo will say, but I love him. And then Habo Silalo, they'll say, yeah, but this man will never do anything for you. But then Silalo says, but I love him. In his WAITRHOOD state, whatever, I love him. So Silalo ends up borrowing Sipho money so that Sipho can pay lobola for Silalo. Isn't that what this WAITRHOOD is creating? The kind of phenomenon that WAITRHOOD is creating?
And, I love the fact that I made a disclaimer at the beginning that I will not give answers. Mine, I think, the amount of questions we are receiving are telling me that, I've done what I was here to do. It was for us to start thinking about this. Those are some of the realities, my sister. Those are some of the realities where you have to consider, okay, either I cohabitate and then or I give this guy chelete wanyala, and then we continue with life. It will be our likunutu, and then he'll make it his likunutu with Hlonie. Hlonie will make it his likunutu with KG, and so forth and forth. And eventually everyone knows. I think those are then the difficult, I know some people would then argue and say a man needs to, I know that like a lot of fathers would probably say, I find confidence in knowing that you could put together the bare minimum to meet the minimum ya lobola so that you'll be able to do something to look after my daughter, and others who are on the other spectrum of feminism may argue that I don't need him to look after me, I just need him to love me. And so we are just doing this cultural right. And so these are questions, these are conversations you need to have. And I do pray that this is informing Yam's program for your next retreat.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Madisa says, trying to imagine a year where we just do church without organizations and uniforms just to reboot. Simanya is saying, considering that young adult movement is a non-affiliating, non-trailing movement, non-trialing, I think she wants to say, movement, would we then not say the church is in fact answering the call of being inclusive and looking beyond a person's socioeconomic status? Somebody also alluded to that on the Zoom call about, I think who was responding, and she says, YAM stands for exactly that. We carry each other in the name of inclusivity, economics, psychological, and spiritually.
Look, and so what I would not do is say, is this the case or not? But where I would suggest, I would challenge Yammers, and I think it's a beautiful moment with all of us here, is to say, are our programs inclusive?
Yeah.
Can Sipho and Taoling make it to our program without needing to belong to a society where there are people that can carry them? I hope we can challenge ourselves and answer those questions in our corners.
Yeah. A question from Lens. Secondly, my gentle brother, if it happens that they happen to divorce and end up losing everything, even their jobs, worst case scenario, won't that take them back to waithood? So if Sipho gets married and or enters into waithood because of divorce.
I love this. I love this question, because when we lose our social markers, we tend to almost shrink in our position in society.
Yeah.
When I stop working, then suddenly I don't feel like I'm participating in society as the adult I used to participate as. When I am no longer married, suddenly I've lost the social marker. Now that's our place as the church. How do I make sure that when tragedy hits, I still, when tragedy hits, my dignity and my personhood is still intact? A beautiful book, I think, is a really beautiful book. I think I'll for the first time in this presentation, I will refer to the Bible. Another beautiful book is the book of Job for us to engage this particular question.
Yeah.
When I lose everything, do I cease to be righteous? When I lose everything, do I cease to be someone who is growing in life?
Yeah.
Or in my loss, I even grow deeper into my skin? Well, the book of Job suggests that he grows through the process of loss. And now the question is, as a church, how are we creating spaces where my moments of divorce, my moments of such challenges that rob me of my social markers, which are not just merely markers, but much more than that, those moments help me grow even deeper in my journey of discovering self, but even in my journey with God as an adult? I think then that's a question. As Yam, how do we speak to our members who have undergone or who are undergoing divorce? How do we make sure that they are restored? How do we make sure that they do not find the need to suddenly retreat to the back because they have lost these social markers?
Sure, so true. I think I'm hearing two ways and forms of waithood. The one is living in waithood, like living in a state of waithood. And you spoke at the beginning, Jorge, this is where maybe you lack education, you went through adolescence, and then you became an adult, but then it's like I want to plan your life, right?
Yeah.
But then the other part is going through a state of suspension. Now this is where this question comes through: a divorce or losing everything or loss of everything, or the book of Job. So I think these are two, they both can be a state of suspension, but one seems to be a permanent living in a state of suspension, and another one is going through a state of suspension. So
I love this, man. You know, it's the book of Job, perhaps that's the next presentation. The book of Job gives us a model of waithood.
yeah.
He has lost all the social markers. He no longer has the money. He no longer has children.
Yeah.
He is isolated from his community. Who is he in that moment?
But isn't that going through? Isn't the book of Job going through a state of waithood? Because it's not like he's always been Lepakshop. Job was not always Lepakshop. He's always had something. So going through and living in.
Now,
the one is permanent, and the other one is.
As the church, we need to help people to go through waithood and not live in waithood.
Thank you.
And perhaps that's what it offers us.
Yeah.
How do we create spaces where people can go through waithood as opposed to living in waithood?
Yeah.
Ashes are not meant to be a permanent state, but they're a transitional stage.
Yeah. You know, I think that's what I'm hearing. And the question about divorce, when people go through a divorce, the one thing I say to people is, remember, you are going through a divorce. You are not living in a divorce. So you need to also identify who you are on the other side of divorce. So I like when you say, Hore, we need to assist people to recognize Hore, waithood can be a transitional state. You don't have to live in it as the church.
And perhaps that's our response to the church, as the church, making sure that people, you see, I said we'll discover these answers together, making sure that people do not live in waithood, but going through waithood.
Absolutely. Hlonie, in the next 8 minutes, there is one last question. Yeah, Dineo. Okay, maybe I don't know if you have a few final moments that you would like to say to us as we go through this. I'm back to Dineo. Dineo says we tend to neglect clergy on these topics, and it feels like they are there for us as youth and adults in what we go through the waithood, while they themselves, particularly the young adult clergy, goes through the most themselves. We need to pray for them as much as they do for us. Like David says. Aya says, as a church, we should break the deprivation trap. And I like those two because they are also clergy. Just because people are clergy, it does not mean they are not affected by these phenomena that we as society find themselves as. You might find that there are many clergy who are living in a state of waithood, and then we are not addressing them.
Sure. You know, and I think I love the fact that we are creating a space where we acknowledge that you know, and so we even take into consideration those who are clergy, those who are laity. You know, I think these things are not unique to anyone. They are common to all, you know, and I think if we can have a response as a church, it will benefit everyone, you know, but because before anyone is a clergy, they are a church member, you know, so if we have a response of making sure that people go through waithood, you know, then it will help everyone, you know, and Mr. Mdima is absolutely correct, you know, in saying we need to break the deprivation trap, because that's what also lands us here, you know. But I think also to circle back to what Usisi Isa said, which perhaps then takes me to my final remarks, is really to say we need to make sure that people can always, as long as people are meant to participate as adults, we need to make sure that they are afforded the opportunity, you know, and perhaps this even begins with us, you know, so we should commission into society young people who on our streets and in our families are able to disrupt and undermine practices that, one, make sure that people stay in waithood. So that's the first thing. And we need to make sure that we also undermine and we do away with practices in our families that glorify those who have gone through waithood and disregard those who are still in waithood. It means myself as Lihlohonolo, if I am at a position where I have these social markers and I'm able to contribute to Lifukohaye, and my older cousin cannot, who may not have the same social markers simply because maybe my parents decided to migrate out of the small city where our family is. And that's where my advantage came from. I need to take it upon myself to say, no, Abuti, your role remains your role. I do not suddenly hijack your role in the family, in our family customs, And then for me, he'd then be able to say, she's Munna, it then traces back to the God that is the God that I have a relationship with, the God that I worship. That's what has changed my heart. We need to make sure that even see Polybun Tauling at our street corners as a church, how do we respond to them? Are we just preaching about them as examples in our sermons when we run out of sermon points? Do we just condemn Sipuli Tauling knowing that their mothers will agree and suddenly Logona will feel good about ourselves? Or are we as a church being creative and saying, wherever every church is, there's a street corner. And how is our mission reaching those people? How is our mission reaching the young men who are always available to help at the gravesite, but after that, we don't see them, they disappear because they are not as well dressed as everyone else at the funeral? How is our mission helping to speak into the lives of those who are in our communities and they prefer to wear uniform and cannot come when we are dressed in our Sunday best? Let us challenge ourselves. Let us make difficult decisions, even around our costings, the price of our activities. Obviously, this will differ from one society to another. But let us have difficult conversations so that everything about our activities is missional. Because at times we fall into the trap of saying this is justified because the output will be missional. Let everything about our practices be missional.
Awiti, thank you so much. Ndu on Zoom, I don't want them to say, Hore, I did not read that comment. Mine is in the name itself, Young Adult Movement. I am interested to understand how it came about because I personally have a different view of what an adult is, and it may not necessarily be defined by one's socioeconomic status. I think you touched on this quite a bit, or rather at great length. And Aldersgate Methodist Church, I'm not sure who this is, the YAM of today provides a safe haven for those who have lost, provides a crutch for those who are picking themselves up, and the movement tries by all means to aid in moving forward from the past to new beginnings, enrichment programs, help find employment, help with mental health. The movement has no end. Thank you so much for all of your comments. Abushani, do you want to say another final word?
Nothing on my end. I really just want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I pray that the conversation continues beyond this. I pray that it challenges us in how we do our mission and how we do our work as an organization, as a movement. I hope it challenges beyond YAM. I hope these are questions that we'll continue to ask ourselves, even in other organizations, but also in the general life of the church, but I pray that YAM will be a thorn at the floor of at the floor of the different gatherings to challenge our church to not forget the Sipos and the Sintaulings. And those were fictional names. There's no Sipo and Intauling. So please don't be offended if I borrowed your name. I just thought it would be very odd to speak of myself in third person. But thank you and bless you. And maybe, I think if we can, maybe you can end it at, and maybe in our different spaces, we must remember also to pray of people who find themselves in this particular space. That's what I would also. Yeah.
Hlonie, we cannot thank you enough. As the young adult movement, what we had done in preparation for our journey to the inaugural first ever connectional retreat in November, we made an intentional decision that every single week we are going to talk about these uncomfortable conversations. Regardless of what this conversation is, we are going to make use of the resources we have in and outside of the church, and you're part of the resources that we have within the church, and we are continuing to use resources even outside of the church so that we can bring the church and society together, to say the time for us to separate ourselves as believers and as church people is gone. And as YAM, we really believe that it is gone. Now we are bringing these two together. That is why we do not have an affiliation fee. It's because we recognize the CPOs of our societies. And that is why we are saying as YAM, come as you are. Because sometimes even the uniform is costly for the CPOs of this world, but everyday CPO and Sintauling would be wearing something. And we are saying, just as you are, from Gokunengo Goza, you will belong here. And we are happy to have you here. I was hoping that before we close, we will flight one of the videos that will lead us to our inaugural retreat that shows people when it's going to be, where it's going to be. But Hlonie, let me tell you that we are going to utilize it, and we are not apologetic about borrowing from those ones that God has borrowed to us. Thank you so much for this topic. And let me also say that we are one of those people who also helped us to come with this topic, so that today we are able to talk about it. We are so grateful. It has sparked conversations already, but why go stop? Because people were like glued to it. But thank you so much for coming through once again and being a gift unto us. May God bless you. May God bless your journey. May God bless your family. It is about time that we intentionally pray for marriages and families. Pray for our children, because if we do not pray for our children become the CPOs and the Sintaulings of the society, and then we don't know what to do with them because we would have dropped the ball. You made a point about ECD earlier on. And that is why I believe so strongly, just like Reverend Molo, we need to pray for our children from an early age and dedicate them to what God has, to the purpose that God has for them. Thank you so much, Morena Muduma Avete Handle. Friends, thank you so much for joining us this evening and being so active in participating with the conversation tonight. Continue with the conversation in your society, continue with the conversation in your home, and ask your family, why is Malume Sipho not part of the family gatherings? Why is Malume Sipho not being taken seriously? Just because Malume Sipho does not have what I have as Silalo, or what I have as Mandla, or whoever else, so that everything else, we bring the church together with the family, and we say we have to disband these things, we have to disrupt these practices, we have to undermine these practices so that they will cease to exist. And so, friends, those of you who are on the Zoom call, I am giving you permission now to put on your cameras so that we may pronounce benediction together. Yemas are gorgeous. So Moyem, we only accept you in Yem if you are made in the image of God, because those are the only people who are gorgeous. So if you are made in the image of God, come, this is a home for you, and you do belong. So friends, please feel free to put on your videos so that we may all pronounce benediction together. Oh, Lebatabagodi bedroom. Already you are in one of the, Mr. Maseko, I can see you have gone ahead of us. Got pillow talk. So pillow talk is one of the topics we have on our program in November. So you can see Yem is breaking barriers and doing all things that people think about. Oh, it's so good to see you. Hello, Drew. How are you doing? And so, friends, I think we can all now pronounce benediction together in the language of your heart. And now may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, the love of Christ,
the fellowship and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit, rest and abide with us now and forevermore. Amen.
Amen.
Hi, Kama.
Now and
Amen.
forevermore.
Hello, Mrs. Hlonie.
Hello. Cheers. Bye.
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you, Hlonie.
Sure. Thank you, guys, and bless you.